Sorry, Jordan. Cheers, bro. Oops, Shanson. Let me just put this one in. Is it on though? Yeah.
Anyway.
What's that, mango?
If there is no organizer, are you okay with that? Yeah? If there is no organizer, we won't even be here. Yeah. So we constitute in ourselves a specific body form, right? Okay? Beautiful. Very organized. I mean, when you breathe in air, this air has a lot of components, but we utilize some of it, goes through our lungs, process it,
it's like when we
exchange it, use the oxygen, get rid of the carbon dioxide.
And digest food,
food, same thing. So all of this demonstrates that there is a process built in by something that is intelligent and wise. It's not a product of nothingness and coincidence or chance. So your question about if there was nothing as a creator, God, no God, this world would not make any sense. If there is no God, there should be nothing in existence. Okay. What about many gods? Have you ever driven a car when there are two independent steering wheels? Well, I did when I was learning driving. The driving instructor, do you know that? Some of them has, but they have a clutch or something or a brake. Right. Now imagine you have a car made with independent controls on left and right. Both of you in the car, you're not talking to each other anymore. You want to take the car to the north, and you say, no, I'm going to take the car to the south. Where's the car going to go?
Nowhere.
Because you have independent control of this car. This car is not going to go, if it goes to the north, then you are overpowered by him.
So you're saying if people need to come to...
Now I'm talking about the universe.
Okay.
If the universe was a product of many gods, this universe will be in corruption and chaos and ruin. Imagine one God whose absolute says, rain now. Other God says, no, I want thunder and sunshine, whatever. It's not going to happen. You'll be chaos and corruption and the whole universe will be destroyed. One God says, I don't want this earth. I want to get it destroyed right now. I don't like it. Another God says, I like it. I want it to be here. What's going to happen? Same kind of things. You cannot have more than one absolute being. So polytheism, or belief in more than one God, is something that your heart and your mind will reject. So those people who believe there's more than one God,
can't they, like, how do you say?
If they compromise
together,
then they are not absolute. An absolute being doesn't compromise. An absolute being.
Can't they be absolute together?
Okay, think about. Okay, let me give another example. When we're talking about an absolute being, an absolute God has qualities of absolute for everything in terms of qualities: knowledge, power, will, and so on. Imagine now there's two absolute beings, and they're all knowledgeable. One of them wants to keep his ideas secret. Can he do that when the other one is all knowledgeable? He can't. He's going to find out because he's all knowledgeable. So you are actually now saying, I cannot keep my ideas secret, meaning I am limited, deficient. I'm being overpowered by something else. I'm not absolute. So this is what the Quran actually points to in one of the verses. لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَا. Had there been more than one gods, there will be chaos and corruption and ruin. Yeah? So polytheism, or multiple deities or gods, is not something that is rational, intellectual, reasonable, or believable. What is left with then, when there has to be a God, not nothing, there cannot be multiple gods, you are left with the concept of one creator, one absolute being. There are not many creators or a concept. How many more? There are not many concepts which are like this. So you're talking about monotheistic religions or belief systems, and these are like mainly Judaism, Christianity in some way, and Islam in the purest form. Okay, so we Muslims say from the very beginning, when man was placed on this earth, there has always been this one religion, one ideology, which is believing in and submitting to the one absolute creator. The same creator guided people at multiple times and places with the same message. But what went wrong is this: people started moving away from this message and making up their own, corrupting it. Imagine the message says,
different interpretations and stuff.
imagine the message was, be just, don't steal. And there was guys who are in power, he says, but we want to be more powerful. I want to loot and get all this wealth. And he said, the only way I can do that is by somehow changing the scripture, this message of God, and saying, it's okay, you know what? If you loot other people other than your own tribe, or your own nation, or your own country, it's okay. This is how corruption comes in the scripture. And we find this in quite a few religions, where it's saying, it's okay to be with this behavior with the goyim, the Gentiles. You've heard of the word Gentiles and goyim?
I don't even know what that is.
Okay.
What's that?
So you have a religious tradition like the Jewish people. They're the Jews, the chosen one of God, and everyone else is the Gentiles, the goyims. You treat them differently than you treat yourselves.
So
Not necessarily, but
people
treat
who are
differently.
not religious.
No, people who are not born Jew. They have the way you treat them. Like for example, as a Jew, you cannot charge interest and usury because that's coming from greed. Imagine, I want to build a house. I don't have money. You're rich, so I go to get money from you. You gave me £50,000, and then you say, look, give me £100,000 back. Why? You have no problem in your deficiency in money. You are so rich. Even if I did not give the money back to you, it's not going to decrease your wealth. And I was in need. You, from your compassion, because you're a compassionate human being, gave me, okay fine, give me your money back, 1 year later. But demanding give me, on top of that, another £50,000, that's greed. Interest is actually this, where you charge extra based on this greed. So, in Islam it's absolutely forbidden. In Judaism, you cannot charge interest to another Jew, but to a non-Jew you can. Do you see where the problem starts? Because when you treat people differently with this kind of things, this is where I'm saying in the past, the scripture eventually gets corrupted like this, where people have moving away from the real essence of the message that God gave for everyone, and you have it for your own self, your own tribe, your own family, and for everyone else that's different. So as time went by, people changed this message, and then they introduced the ideas of different things, and that's why you have so many different religions. But if you were to really deeply ponder on the roots of the religion, even in Hinduism that we talked about right now, that they're polytheistic, if you go to the scripture, it says Ekang Ishar Dityanasti, there's one God and not two. It's there, it's still there. It's still something that you can decipher, and you can actually what's this called, extract from this layers and layers of distortion. There is this core message that there's only one God. So polytheism or multiple belief system arose because people went away from the original message of God and they corrupted it. God, our creator, he isn't someone who just leaves people astray and do whatever you want. He sends another prophet and another messenger, even to the same nation. That's why we are told in the Quran that God does not punish anyone, meaning he doesn't require anyone of what they're doing until and unless he sends a prophet or a messenger. Because that's only just. Imagine now the police comes along just over there and says, puts handcuff on, arrest, you have committed the crime punishable by death because you are speaking in Speaker's Corner. They can't do that because there is no law preceding this. If there was a law, they have to make it clear that speaking in Speaker's Corner is a crime punishable by death. We were not aware of it. They didn't make it known. So God does not account people for what they do until he tells them what they're supposed to do. That's why the prophets and messengers comes and tells us, this is what you should do. Be good and kind and compassionate and merciful and just. Don't be greedy, don't deceive, don't cheat, don't lie, don't rape, don't murder. The do's and don'ts. And many of these do's and don'ts, as you alluded to earlier, is something that is common to everyone. Why? Because that was the message that got sent to everyone. It's still there. It's still there.
So can I just say, so what we were talking about is So we were saying that the guy over here was saying he was talking about
Christianity.
Christianity and why
They are wrong.
yeah, they're wrong and I'm right, basically. So what I was saying is, so you're talking about all creationism and God and stuff.
Yeah.
The thing is, no one. We can say everyone has their own opinion and stuff, but no one knows for a fact.
That's what I.
No one knows for a fact what is the truth of creation, because this has happened where people are living today. This has happened so many years ago. No one knows this for a fact. So for all these people, they're just following their beliefs and their religion, and they're following
Their truth.
They're following their truth based on what's happened to them in their life and what's like the impacts of the world.
So basically,
I
how do we know
personally
it's the
think-
truth? How do we know? what's the
Not
truth?
necessarily. I'm just saying for the gentleman over here that was talking about, I'm wrong, you're right, my religion is wrong, your religion is right. I personally think that's something that shouldn't be done, because religion, as all base religions, yes, like as you said, like people misinterpret stuff and try to twist religions and use it in bad ways and stuff. But at their base and at their foundation, all the purpose of all religions is good and is to help people live a better life and help people do good. So I personally think you shouldn't tell someone I'm right and you're wrong. Just do you know what I mean? Like,
Just to address this point. Yeah? So it seems logical in a way, what you just said, but we need to think, deeply enough. And this is what Islam demands us to be: critical thinkers, deep reflection on our own self, on our universe around us, and then we will easy for us to come to the right conclusions. So, as I said, the Islamic model or the understanding of religion is this: there has always been one way of life acceptable to God. Only one way. And that has been from the very beginning to the very last of the Prophet and Messenger. What has happened throughout this time is people have changed it into different forms. So our role of the mind is to find out the uncorrupted form, if it exists, which we say it does, from the corruption. So what are the signs of corruption is what you should be asking. Okay? So there are various ways of looking at it. You can study every single religion, which are monotheistic, or you can start with one and go one by other, depending on how much time you have. Okay? So when people say we have no right to judge others, that's true, but we still have to decipher the truth from all this around us. And there can only be one truth, not conflicting truth. If God is one, think about it. Okay? If God is one, and He alone is to be thanked for, to be glorified and praised, that's worshipping. Yeah? And then in one religion it says, I have a son, worship him too. Or I have a wife, worship her too. Or if you worship my wife or my daughter or my son, I'm going to put you into hellfire forever and forever. And another religion...
Wasn't so you said about like prophets and stuff, you should only follow if there's a prophet.
So
Isn't Jesus...
In Islam, Jesus is a prophet.
And in Christianity, what?
He is Son of God.
By the way,
or
I'm
God.
not a practicing Christian, so I don't know all my...
We can all learn from each other. That's the whole idea. So in Christianity, he's considered to be a son of God and elevated also to God. Okay, that's why many people, they will not say he's son of God, they will say he's God. If you press them too hard, he says he's son of God, and there is a father of God. Okay, God
It's like
the Father.
he's the human form.
He's God in flesh. They say.
He's just bringing his flesh.
They say he's God in flesh. Okay, so we will just address this point, but at least we have an understanding that there's ways of finding out the truth. Because if there are conflicting concept of God, you know very well, they cannot all be the truth. God has a son, you should worship him too, and God has no son. If you worship God having a son, you're going to go to hell. Two different contrasting concept and message. They both cannot be true. They're mutually exclusive. So that's why we need to understand how do we then filter this. Okay? One way of this is by looking at the very concept itself of God and also the revelation. Because the revelation of God, or the scripture, the book that God sends to guide people, because how did God guide people throughout times? the various levels of guidance. In our understanding, God guides people even without sending prophet and messengers by the intellect, by showing them guidance within themselves. Okay? To give you an example, imagine there is an idol worshipper who has made a statue, an idol of some kind, and is meditating and worshipping that God, or worshipping God through the statue. During that meditation, a dog came, lifted one of his legs and urinated on the idol, and it broke the meditation of the worshipper, the individual. And he said, how could this dog do that? He started trying to grab this dog to punish it. The dog started running. He ran after the dog. As he was running after the dog, it clicked suddenly on his head. Hang on. If I'm worshipping a God who can't even stop himself from defiling by a dog, I'm worshipping a God who cannot even protect itself from defilement, being urinated upon. How can that even be God?
But the thing is, animals, humans, we all have free will. So I think you're...
No, I'm not talking about the animal. I'm talking about, he's thinking about God.
Yeah.
The God is worshipping has no power itself, an idol, to be protected from urination by a dog. That click, that spark was the guidance for that individual, that gentleman or woman. Because that point, he should have realized that this is not God, cannot be God. I'm worshipping the wrong understanding of God. God cannot be my idol that I've formulated. Exactly. So you see, there was no book, there was no prophet or a messenger, it was needed. God can directly guide people to this kind of moments in life. God also gives us a foolproof method of guidance, and that is through raising up a prophet or a messenger from among the people who they know to be trustworthy, truthful, righteous, upright, sincere, so that when this individual brings them the guidance, they are easy to accept it. They are ready to accept. Imagine I am the most wicked person, the bad person. Like you have seen me killing, plundering, cheating, lying, all this, and then I come to give you an advice. Be nice, don't cheat. You'll say, get lost, get away. I mean, you don't even practice it yourself, and you tell me. That is why all the prophets and messengers, when they came, people, their objection was like, how can God send a man to guidance? But they didn't just reject this individual, because that individual they know was someone who's trustworthy, reliable, truthful, upright. So our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the nicknames that he has is Sadiq al-Amin, the truthful, trustworthy individual. People will no doubt accept whatever he says. So even if he said, in fact, at one point during his call, when he was commissioned by God to be a prophet, you see, he didn't make himself. God made him a prophet when he was like at the age of 40. So he went into one of their hills. This is one way of them bringing their attention. And then he would shout, all people like, Ya Sabaha, or this community, and people will realize something very important thing is happening. They will all leave their job, their work, their studies, whatever, and they go there and find out what's wrong, what's happening, because it's a community, what's this called? Call where the community is in danger, or maybe some kind. So he says, look, if I told you, behind me, behind the mountain, there's an army waiting to attack you, would you believe me? They said, yes, we believe you. We know of you of not lying ever at all. We have never seen you lying. We believe you, accept you. We will accept what you say. So that was their testimony. Then they said, okay, then God has made me a prophet. Accept that there's no one worthy of worship God. Reject your false deities, worship God alone. And they said, no, we're not going to do that, because there's a different reason why. Because their worship of the deities was also a political, financial interest. Their finance and politics was vested in their worship of different deities that they made, because there was a lot of income and prestige and status was involved with it. Not because they realized there's only one God. They knew there was only one God, but they didn't succumb or conform to this belief. So God sends, coming back to the point, prophets and messengers, the guide, were trustworthy, reliable, upright persons. And when they come with the guidance, people are already receptive. And on the guidance that's presented to them, it has its own evidence. Otherwise, anyone can believe in anything, right? So the evidence is within the guidance itself that is brought. So if we consider the concept of God in one hand, we can filter what is acceptable and what is not. If we look at the guidance itself, we can be rest assured with certainty that this is what we're supposed to believe and follow and who it is. Because the revelation will bring a stop to our speculation, intellectual speculation. Because when we think about other things, we're speculating intellectually, right? So imagine now, this is something I recently was reading up on largely how they actually justify this. A concept of God where there are these gopis. These are like cowgirls between the age of, say, 12 to 14 or 17, teenage young girls. They're having within their tradition bath in the banks of Ganges or Ganga or Yamuna. Actually it's Jamuna. This is in India, so you know the story is where it may be coming from. And they're only allowed to bathe there, and no man can bathe there. This is the tradition. So a specific isolated place only for women. So they bathe naked, because between themselves this is tradition. They left their clothes on the shore. God, called Krishna, or one of the forms of God, or avatar, or whatever they want to call him, he comes along and he takes the clothes, he goes up to a tree with the clothes, and he started watching and enjoying. Sooner or later, they've noticed someone's watching them, and they then demanded, what are you doing here? It's not something that they gave permission to, consent to. Give our clothes back. He says, no. Come individually one by one from the water, naked, then I'll give you clothes back. They're trying to give a lot of reasons in terms of how, these people who are worshipping him in the first place wanted to be the wife of this individual God, and that's why it's okay. But if you look at it, he is asking for this naked girl to come open because he wants to enjoy their beauty, their nakedness. And the poor girls, think about it, does not click to you that this is God Almighty, the one who's just, the one who's pure, the one who demands purity? To me, I'm sorry, I have to disagree with these Hindu traditions. However, you depict that this is actually like, some kind of symbolism. No,
So,
I mean,
I agree. Like,
so that concept of God.
It's fair enough if you're like singling out certain ideas and certain arguments.
You're filtering them. You're filtering them
from a religion. So that I believe.
Because your heart and mind has been equipped with certain ways to filter, which is something not believable, to something which your heart and mind would be finely tuned with it, right?
I believe that is a good thing.
Good.
But
So
what I do think is that's what my point is. I think religions are very broad, and there's so many ideas and so many opinions.
But take it to the conclusion.
I will. There's so many like ideas from the religious books that you can apply it to modern day life and stuff. But I think that's what my point was.
I'm talking about the concept of God.
The religion as a whole and the idea as a whole of the religion and the person's intent in following this religion is good. So I feel like I shouldn't tell someone to. So if you're both Muslims, I shouldn't tell you because I don't believe in. Because I don't follow a certain religion, I shouldn't tell you.
That is
believe
wrong.
what I
That's the
believe
point
what I
we're
believe.
discussing. At this point, we're not going to judge anything.
Because of little differing.
But do you follow one thing?
ideas.
We are not judging any
no,
religion
of course
at
not.
all.
Of course
What
not.
we're doing is we are trying to filter the true and the right and the correct concept by using your mind alone or using the revelation. So you've heard about the Christians talking about God, right? Let's briefly touch upon this concept. You have a God who has a son who comes down, who's supposed to be all knowledgeable, and he says, I don't know the hour. You will see this is one of the things that we ask our Christian friends most of the time. How do you explain this? How do you justify believing in it? If you are all knowledgeable, think about it. If you are all wise and all knowledgeable from eternity to eternity, meaning you know the past, the present and the future already, What's your name?
Owen.
Owen. Now, imagine I know Owen, this name, and I don't forget. I will always know this name, yeah? Because I am all knowledgeable. Then I go to place over there, and then I don't know your name anymore. Is that possible while I'm supposed to be all knowledgeable? Doesn't matter where I go. If I'm all knowledgeable all the time, I will always know your name. So what they're saying, God sent his son, who is also God. He came down on earth, took a human body. He doesn't know everything. I would say that doesn't make any sense. Because if you are all knowledgeable to begin with, you will always be all knowledgeable. You cannot be less than all knowledgeable. You cannot be. Because you know the future already. There's nothing more to know. You know it already. Then how can you not know it unless you forget? And that is an imperfection, a deficiency in a concept of God. God is a perfect being with his attributes. If he has knowledge, it's a perfect knowledge. So 100% all knowledge, not 5%. And 90% knowledge and 10% ignorance. It doesn't count. So just this one example will tell you there's something definitely wrong with this belief system. Somewhere something went wrong. That is why we say Christ, he came to tell people to worship God, his God. And of course he's not all knowledgeable because he's a creation of God. The creation of God, you, me and everything else, is not all knowledgeable. All wise, all knowledgeable attribute only belongs to the one absolute being, that is God. Okay? So when we filter, we can arrive at the correct conclusion. Okay? And if we look at the concept presented in the books, if it doesn't get in line with your heart and your mind, there's something wrong with it. Because God who created you knowing that what you are capable of accepting and capable of rejecting. He cannot force you to a book which says God is a half elephant and half man as a result of chopping the heads off the man's head, Ganesh, and then the only thing that's a story I have to tell you again very briefly. There was this God, he has a wife, goddess, and he has a son, right? He puts his son on the guard in front of the door, so no one goes inside, So wife is there, right? Whatever reason, okay, let's say just it's okay. Protect the family. For whatever reason, he didn't do that. He became angry. God, the husband God, or the father God, became angry. He chopped off the head of his son. And then he eventually realized, because what have I done? I've killed my own son. Not killed, but chopped my own son. So he looked around, saw an elephant, chopped off the head of the elephant, put the elephant's head on the half decapitated body, and now you have an elephant head and a human body. His name is Ganesh. If you ever go to East London or Wembley, Middlesex, and go to a jewellery shop, he's the god of economics. To the Hindus, they worship this Ganesh. You will see elephant to the trunk, but he's got a belly and a human body. But you will ask yourself, what kind of concept of God is that? It doesn't get tuned with your heart and your mind. So what we're saying is a concept of God which you and I are seeking to find the truth must make sense to you. Now let me give you an example. And you tell me honestly. This is from the Quran, right? A book that we believe in. So I'll show you from the English translation. It's only 4 lines. A small surah. A surah is like a chapter in the Quran. And the Quran is composed of 114 surahs as a whole book. And this chapter is called chapter of Ikhlas or purity. It presents to us the concept of God in a nutshell. And see if your heart and your mind is finally in tune with it, or your heart and your mind says averse to it. It's not for me. Yeah? Think about it. Because the true concept of God from God through his revelation must make sense about him. Say he is Allah, the one. Allah, the eternal refuge. The one who is without father, mother, individual. Basically, he is absolute. What footnote is that? Here. He is absolute, perfect. That's what it means, the Arabic word. So, absolute, independent. He neither begets nor is born, meaning he's not someone who gives birth to or produces any other. Neither himself is a product of someone else, a parent or lineage. nor is there to him any equivalent or likeness or comparison. He says, one and only, unique, absolute, independent, perfect. Everything relies on him, depends on him, he depends on no one. He is not born, doesn't produce offsprings or children, and there is nothing co-equal or like him in any way, shape or form. Consult your heart and your mind. Does this concept of God make sense to you? There is one absolute being. Has to be one. Has to be one.
Why do they say it's a him?
No, this is just in Arabic language. They have to use the language. This is how God described himself. You can use he, she. There is no it in Arabic language. So God tells us he's not a man or a woman. In fact, he created both. He is not a gender. This is just a language where the Arabs have used in customary to describe God to be someone who is free from any gender. So if God used she, you can, because there's only two gender pronouns rather in Arabic language, one can ask, is God a female? Same question can ask. So what are you going to use? There is no, either he or she, that's what you're going to use. So Arabs say the sun is one gender, moon is one gender in terms of how you say it.
Yeah, it's just
You know, when you say, okay, right, I went to a ship and she was beautiful. Ship, using a feminine attribute. My country is England, she is beautiful. She's not feminine. You see, when we use pronouns, customary use is not because something is a male or a female. Yeah, it's not because something is a male or a female. A ship is not a female, neither is a country. But we just give the pronouns because that's what we are. In English you have another one called neuter gender for it. In Arabic, no. So God chose the masculine gender, but he says clearly he's not a man or a woman. And I think he's the creator of all things.
Why did he choose the masculine?
You can ask the same question, why did he not choose the feminine? And he will say, why did he choose the feminine? So the Arabs...
Yeah, but is there an answer to my question?
Yeah, because in the understanding where feminine gender was considered to be someone who is very gentle, very kind and compassionate, someone like, receptive and so on. God is saying, no, he's the creator. He's the one who also punishes. He's merciful, but he also punishes. It is not within the, say, makeup of a woman to punish. To punish someone. So the Arab minds, this is my humble understanding, will be in conflict. God is like describing with a she, and he's saying he's going to destroy us. I mean, come on. He cannot be. God cannot punish if you describe him with a she attribute. So this is just a...
But that's how you see women.
No. I'm saying this is the understanding of our linguistic tradition at that time. But when God then tells you that he is not anything, there's nothing like unto him. There is nothing like unto him. He's not a man or a woman or of any kind. Anything that you can imagine, he's not God. So if he was one...
Basically, they're saying that he's not a man or a woman, he's not, but that's just the way in which they work.
Because the other option is not using any pronouns at all, only using noun. But in language, if I keep using nouns without a pronoun, you will see how difficult it gets. That's the reason why we have pronouns. We say he, she, it, they, we, us, rather than just by names, individuals. We resort to now pronouns for a reason. So when the pronouns are used, it is not because he's a male gender. Quran absolutely says no. So God, now see how it feels if I use this, okay, for the clarity then. God is one and only, because God is one and only, God has to be absolute. If God is one and only and absolute, he cannot be born, because there will be someone else who is born from. Then he will be dependent on someone else. If he also gives birth or produces something, then there's something like God. So if God is one and only and absolute and independent, not born, doesn't give birth, can there be any likeness to God in any way, shape or form? There cannot be. So this concept of God, if you deeply reflect, your heart and your mind will say, yes, I can accept that. This is how, if I were to believe in God, that's what God should be. That's how God should be like.
Why as I said, no one really knows for a fact what is.
Let's address that
what
point.
God is and how.
What makes you believe in the Quran?
creation.
Okay, so let's address this point.
Why can't I believe that this idea of God is not right, and why can't I believe? Because
You have to give your reasons.
I feel like you're not. No, because I feel like you're sometimes you're discounting the like impact of the world and all the things that happen in the world on people's opinions. And
Give
stuff.
Owen, put an alternative concept of God, and let's discuss this too in comparison to this.
You said it to me. You said God is energy. Do you remember when we spoke? You said I believe God is just an energy around us, and we're just atoms within it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I can't have it. I don't. That's the thing. I don't have a specific and like. What's the word? Like, haven't decided on a complete
It's just
idea
an intuition,
of what
it's a feeling, and you can't like describe it. You don't have that.
But if you were to take
You were
it,
talking before, like you said, if you believe in God, you just feel that that's right. Like this is the right way. You just feel it's in
Okay.
your heart. You
So-
don't really have a reason for it, and that's the same.
you realise you're not far off the Muslim narrative by saying energy. You're not that far off.
Yeah, no.
let's talk about this energy. This energy, we say God possesses energy, and you say God is energy. The difference at the moment. This energy has to be either conscious, self-aware, or not conscious and not self-aware. That's the two options. If you say this energy is not conscious, not self-aware, then this energy cannot bring about anything, cannot do anything.
But I don't think it has. I think like the energy is everything.
Yeah.
Like it's infinity. It's us. It's
Sure.
not conscious. It is conscious. It's like it's everything, and it can't really be
You see,
described.
in our world,
I
changes happen constantly. Transformation from one form to the other. Matter, energy into conversion. One form to the other. How things, like, how human beings start from a baby and grow older and older and older, and eventually we die, and that's it. There's a process of change and transformation. This process is either directed, willed, or it just happens by itself through this energy. Either the energy is directing it to happen because it's self-aware, it has a goal or direction or a plan, or it just happens without it knowing or interfering, it just happens. Now, which one makes more sense is the question. Let me give you an example to illustrate my point further. Imagine there is a kitchen where you cook. Do you cook?
sometimes.
Sometimes. Now, so he finds your kitchen, he comes to the kitchen, and he sees everything's there. There is a cooker, there is a lighter to light the cooker, the gas cooker. There's a fridge, he opens it, there's milk, there's a cupboard on the shelf, and there's tea in tea bags, and there are cups and plates, and there's water in the sink. And he says, okay, I want a cup of tea with, how many sugars do you like?
2 sugars.
2 sugars. And he waits there. He waits and he waits. You, the willing agent, the one who transforms, the one who directs, the one who changes, the one who brings about, yeah? You're not there. Okay? You're just watching. He waits and waits and waits. Days goes by, months goes by, years goes by, eons goes by, eons. His tea doesn't get produced. Why so? Because there is no willing agent to will to bring all of this together to make tea. Because a conscious agent needs to will this to happen. He's intending it, he wants it. But there's no one else doing it for you. Because you are the chef, for example, you're the cook, you're not bringing them together, you haven't willed it. This tea will never happen. Doesn't matter, you sit there for infinity. You need a conscious, willing agent to bring all this element. Open the fridge door, bring the milk out, untap sink, the water in the kettle, put it in the cooker, light the cooker, the gas flames, boils, bring the tea bags. All of these requires conscious processes by a will. If you believe in an energy which is in control of this universe or not in control of the universe, then without consciousness and will, nothing will happen. It will be like just energy, but no transformation. The fact that we have transformation happening and changes happening tells us that there is a controller, a mover, a director, an organizer. And that's where we say this organizer is what we say God, who possesses, the creator who possesses this energy. Yes, the creator is not without energy. He possesses the energy. He creates. Yeah. So the difference is subtle, but it's quite important. The energy and the creator, the difference being someone or something that is self-aware, conscious, and has a will. So we say the creator created us with a will for a reason. Our fingerprints testify that we are created for a reason, because it's all unique. If it was just by pure chance and coincidence, 2 fingerprints should be the same by coincidence. We have established forensic science, where we use this as evidence. If the fingerprints match, it doesn't match with someone else's, because our fingerprints are unique. And God actually refers to this, people who reflect and think, you know, do you really think that when you are dead and you're rotten, some people say, when you die, when you're dead and that's it, He will not bring you back, He's not going to gather you back together? Just no. Certainly He will. Certainly He will. Even to the very tips of your fingers. Maybe nothing special about it. Maybe there is something special about the tips of your fingers. Okay? God alludes to this point, and we know why, because it's very unique. He will bring you back again to the second life. Yeah, again. As unique as you were, He can bring you back again. No problem. Because God says, He created you first time, He will create you again. Is it difficult? If He creates you first time, He has all this blueprint. If you make something first time, is it difficult or easier to make something like it again? Easier. That's what God tells us to think. If you are created again, why do you then say that there is no afterlife, when you die and that's it? No. There will be justice. There will be a day of judgment where the bad and the wicked don't get away. They will be accountable for what they have done. And the good people, like yourself, the good people will be rewarded for their good. But the wicked people will have their justice seen. They may be punished for what they have done. Yeah? And this is what justice demands. Punishment for the people who have done something evil. Imagine someone who is a serial rapist, killer, child molester, you know, ethnic cleansing, whatever, right? And he gets away. Lives like a king, dies like a king.
So what do you...
Where is the justice?
What do you... how would you... What is the line for that justice, would you say? So you named like a rapist. Is someone that doesn't follow a lot of the stuff in the Quran?
I got your question. So justice means, again, you will be accountable for your actions. The actions have to be told to you first, which ones are acceptable and which ones not. Otherwise, it's meaningless to go and suddenly say, I'm going to punish you for that, when you didn't know whether they're acceptable actions or not.
So say someone's raised without much of a... They're raised without parents, they don't have anyone instilling...
So tell them right
from wrong, instilling a religion like a lot of like good Muslims and good Christians do, and say they sin in their life. How would you say that person will be punished?
God, of course, is ultimately the judge and the arbiter, an arbitrator in terms of, you know, settling the dispute, and He is the owner and the master of the Day of Judgment. He will judge justly. No one will be unjustly treated. That means if an individual, let me give you an extreme. If an individual were somewhere in a
Aborigines or something,
somewhere not, in like an Eskimo individual, there's only a few people, no prophet and messenger came and they left, there's no guidance, no book, and the only tools they have is the intellect. They will be only judged as per the use of the intellect. They cannot be judged otherwise, like, oh, why didn't you do this when you do that? Because they didn't even know what to do. Okay, that is why in one of the chapters in the Quran, God clarifies this position. That this is called. I mean, it's interesting because this is a question people often have. This is in Surah Al-Mulk. I'll show you this. It's very interesting.
I asked this question when I was 10.
Yeah, look.
Yeah. It's like say someone was taught bad, or that say they were brought up with a father or mother that was just someone that was like immoral and didn't really have a good grasp of right
Okay,
and wrong.
yeah.
They're taught wrong their whole life. What they,
So, I'm just reading the relevant parts, right? So there are some people who will be deserving to go to a punishment because of their actions and belief. So he's describing those individuals. And for those who disbelieved in their Lord is the punishment of hell, and
disbelieve. What does that mean?
they disbelieve, didn't believe.
Don't believe in God.
No. Disbelieve in the Lord, meaning didn't believe in the Creator with all His attributes, and didn't believe in the laws or the guidance that the Creator sent. But it has to be made clear to them, right? Wretched is the destination. When they are thrown into it, meaning the hellfire, they hear from it a dreadful inhaling while it boils up. It's like a fire furnace, like they can feel it, hear it. It almost burns with rage. Every time a company is thrown into it, keepers ask them. So there are gatekeepers of hellfire. Did there not come to you a warner? So even the gatekeeper tells the people, you're now going to go in hellfire. Did no one warn you about the hellfire? Meaning, did you not have this message?
Yeah.
What did they say? What they will say? They will say, yes. A warner had come to us, but we denied and said, Allah, this is the name of God, has not sent down anything. You are not but in great error. So they will say, yes, there was a prophet or a messenger or a warner, but we didn't believe in them. We denied them. We rejected them. And we said, God doesn't reveal anything. God doesn't send any prophets and messengers. God doesn't send any scripture or any guidance. God doesn't send anything. You are in plain error. A lot of people say that. And they will then say, if only we had been listening or reasoning, we would not be among the companions of the blaze.
Yeah, so
If we listened and we heard the prophets and the messengers, or we were reasoning, using our intellect, we would not have ended in this place. This is the role of the intellect God had given us to use. If you use your intellect, you would not worship a tripod. You would not worship a tree. You would not worship a tree or a half elephant and a half man. You would not. Using the intellect properly and in sound way, you would not worship anything of the creation. The only thing that your intellect will tell you that is worthy of worship is nothing except the creator of this universe, this cosmos. If you use this intellect and no prophet and messenger came and you said, there is a God, I submit and surrender, you already have believed in him, and this is your judgment. He's not going to put you in hellfire, because you have arrived to the right conclusion that there is a creator who is one and only and absolute.
So are you saying, so can I just see that quick?
Yeah.
So where it says about, I don't know where it says it, but about a disbeliever.
Yeah, so in Islam, a disbeliever is a kafir. You've probably heard this word, oh, you're a kafir, you're a kafir. A kafir linguistically means someone who covers, a farmer is called a kafir. Why? Because they cover the soil with the earth. Knowing the soil is there, knowing the earth is covering. So there's a knowledge involved in this action. A kafir in Islam, in its technical meaning, someone who knows the truth and then rejects it. So the question that we were discussing, if someone doesn't know the truth, you cannot technically say this person is a kafir.
How can you know the truth for sure? Because what you just said, I feel like, is a conflicting interest, because you said God will send a prophet
and a messenger.
A messenger or a prophet to teach you how to live your life.
Yeah.
But you also have your own intellect. You said that your intellect is influenced by God, and your intellect will influence like your beliefs. So
excuse me, are you? She's focusing, so just.
She's got a mind about it.
I thought she was listening, but up to you. It's up to you.
Anyway,
Yeah. The reason I say that, there are some people here in the park, just to introduce you the park dynamics. I come here to tell about Islam and present Islam to people and reason with people about Islam. The lady here, can I finish? Can I finish? You see, she's not even allowing me to speak.
She's got a mind of it. You interrupted to my
I know, but I'm just explaining to the lady who will choose who she wants to speak to. You choose who you want to speak to. No one's gonna do that. Speak to her. But what I'm saying simply, she's a Christian missionary, like we are Islamic. You can call it Muslims who've come here to share the message of Islam. She's here to share.
Yeah, can I just stop making it about
my friend Owen, just one second. Excuse me. Do you see the problem?
Carry on the conversation.
She just asked me a question really quickly, and I just wanted to ask.
Go and ask and then go. Thank you.
No, I'm going to be here.
Oh, she's going to be here. So that's why I'm saying.
Carry on the.
No. That's what I'm saying. So it is not proper that while you were listening,
it's great.
she is trying to interrupt this discussion and talk about Christianity. By all means, go ahead, right? But we'll talk about another time. I'm just showing you how, you know, come on, have your own discussion. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's just carry on the conversation.
Yeah.
No need for
So
any-
Owen.
So
what I'm saying is.
Can I just finish because I was making a point?
Oh, go ahead.
So, I feel like what you're saying.
No, up to you. Carry on, please.
I feel like what you were saying there's conflicting interests.
Which one?
Because you said about we're talking about the God will send a messenger, or
Prophet
a
messenger, and using the intellect as well.
And then you also said that our intellect can be influenced by God. And
No. I said we have to use the intellect. Yeah. The Quran reprimands us for not using the intellect. The Quran says there are people who worship the idols, and those people say, we've seen our forefathers worshipping the idols. And the Quran says, what if your forefathers were wrong? Are you not going to use your sense? They could be wrong too. You can't just simply say, I was born in a family of people who worship a monkey and I'm keeping worshiping a monkey. What happened to your intellect? So God constantly wants us to use the faculty of intellect to revive us in the right thinking. But intellect has its limitation.
You say that the intellect tells us one thing and it's the same for everyone.
No, a sound intellect would not contradict God's revelation. Like the example we said about God being all knowledgeable.
How do you define a sound intellect?
Yeah. So the sound intellect, to give an example of a sound intellect, God is all knowledgeable for all the time. Then he comes down and he's ignorant. The sound intellect will tell you all knowledgeable means all time, all knowledgeable, not 5 minutes ignorant. But if someone says, I'm using the mind, just because the book says so, I'm going to accept it. It's God became ignorant for 33 years or whatever. That's not the use of a sound intellect. Because you are now leaving the use of the intellect, suppressing it, and then subscribing to what a particular book may say. Because you're giving priority to this book and saying, no, this takes priority. Even though your mind does understand that there's a contradiction. Yeah? So sound intellect would not contradict God's true revelation. This is one of the principles that you should go by. Because otherwise, you can believe in anything. Like I half elephant, half monkey God, and say, yeah.
Okay, so my intellect. So my intellect is, my understanding of what my intellect is just like my logic and you know what I mean?
Faculty of your reasoning.
So I'm not a practicing. I don't practice any religion. I'm not a practicing Muslim or anything like that. So does that mean I'm not? I don't know. It doesn't really.
Well, no. What it means is
My intellect tells me that not everything, to not believe everything in these religions. So
your intellect
make me a disbeliever?
No.
Does that mean I should
if you use your intellect as you are using, you would know all of these religious ideas and ideologies cannot be all truth. Yeah? So I've already used the intellect. So that means which one is the truth you need to decipher and filter out. You can use your intellect to filter out, and this was the process that we were showing earlier on in terms of which makes sense or not. Okay, your intellect will then direct you in saying, this doesn't make sense. God is all knowledgeable, not all knowledgeable. God is like a pervert watching naked women having a bath, and so on. So there is this intellect role that you can clearly use, and then say, okay, look, let me now look at this book. Book is something that God supposedly had sent and revealed through the prophets and messengers to guide us to. How does this book tell me about himself and about everything else, right? Does it tell me that I'm created, I'm already doomed? He's created me and I'm already doomed. I'm already guilty. Imagine, You open a bank account, and then the next moment they tell you, okay, you're in debt, my friend, £1 million. Just feed the debt into your account. You'd say, how is that? That is unjust. I've just opened a bank account. It should be blank. Yeah, empty. And then I can put my money in, take my money out. But if you're already guilty, like many religions, I don't want to have to name them anyway. There are many religions who say you are already guilty of a crime that you did not commit. You weren't even there. Someone ate the apple, the fruits.
Do you have an example?
No, we're talking about Adam and Eve, the first parents.
Oh, yeah, go on.
They were there in a garden, and they, because of their lapse and weakness, being also deceived in addition by Satan, they fall short of the requirements, and they disobeyed an action of God, a command of God. They ate of this tree, and now a religious tradition, a big religious tradition says, you are all guilty, every one of you. You are going to be punished to death unless someone else, like me, God, die for you. Now I see that, look, this is problematic to the very core, one after the other. Firstly, how can I be guilty of a crime that I didn't commit? I wasn't there. I did not have any involvement. You see, an action has to be done by a willing agent who is also capable. Can you make me guilty for not saving someone being run over by a bus? The only way I can save is having wings and flying over there. How can I be held accountable and guilty and punishable by death because I could not save someone in Brighton? I cannot simply go and fly because I don't have wings or transport myself. So not only that I have to have the will, but I have the capacity and the ability. Eating of the apple, I wasn't there. I didn't intend it to happen. I didn't eat it myself. So how can I be guilty of that crime which I didn't commit? That is unjust. It's injustice to the very core. Second point, the only way then I can be saved for a crime that I did not commit, do you know how? It's by the God who created me. He commits suicide. He says, I'm going to kill myself to save you. Even more unjust. God creates you in your weakness where you commit actions which is not up to the standard, and then God saves you by killing himself, punishing himself. Does it make sense to you? That's why I'm saying religious traditions must be used and looked at properly, and then say, look, what is the concept of God? What is the concept of sin and salvation? What is the concept of heaven and hell? Is there justice there, or is it just like everyone goes to heaven? I'm not talking about your belief, or am I talking about your belief? I'm just talking about a religious tradition. Everyone goes to heaven, or everyone goes to hell.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
So you just said that it's unfair, right, for someone else, other people to go to hell because of other people, right? Is that what you, as I understand it, you just said it's unfair?
I said you should not be punished for someone else's crime.
Right, okay. So is it fair? So according to Islamic tradition, in Sahih Muslim, Christians are going to be put in hell for the sake of Muslims. And,
You misunderstood. You can open up references like you always do. You misinterpret.
I've got it. It says Christians are going to be sent to hell on behalf of Muslims. It's there. The reference. Right? Okay, I'll read it out.
Let's read and have a look.
Is that said in...
But even that, if you look at it, how can the Christians go to hell? Because of what?
To save
someone else.
Save them.
Repeat what you just said before you...
Let me
No, repeat what you just said first.
Of the Muslims, they will go. The Christians shall go to hell. You said.
Allah's going to put Christians in hell for the sake of Muslims.
What do you mean sake of? Explain.
Instead of Muslims.
No. Explain what do you mean instead of.
Are you saying instead of like Muslims that have committed crimes?
You know what? Let me read it so that I'm not misquoting it.
So you've read it, but you don't remember. No problem.
No, I remember it. I'm saying that.
Please. The text will be clear, right? So I want you to show me a text which has Arabic as well, so I can read the Arabic. Because very often we see here in the park, people have a translation which is also... No, translation doesn't do justice.
It's not translated.
No. Translation doesn't do justice to the topic, because this is the baggage that we build in, what it says. That's why I had to refer to the footnotes when I was chapter 112. This seeking eternal refuge means what? He's perfect, absolute, independent, because that's what the word means in Arabic language. They can't put all there, that's why they put it in the footnote, this is what it means. So even if you had something like this in a hadith, you know, we will check the Arabic and then we can explain it to you what the hadith really means.
You know, it's funny, I watched this all on YouTube and I'm here now. Like, I'm the one like, in between everything.
Yeah. So while you're finding it, it is not fair to punish someone for someone else's crime. It will be unjust. God says, لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. He is not unjust in any way to his worshippers. He doesn't. Because otherwise you will say, look, how can I be punished for someone else's crime? So when we're talking about filtering the religion, look at the concept of God. So when you look at the Quran and it makes sense to you, and the Quran provides you additional evidence for itself, then you can be sure and you can have that conviction. Remember, we're talking about how can I be sure? How can I be sure with certainty that this is it? Because I can't just say otherwise. You're absolutely right. If you're not sure, then you cannot say you're wrong, you're this, you're bad. You can't say that. You can only say, once you're absolutely sure that in my understanding of things, I think this is true, and based on that, this is not true and this is not correct, this is wrong.
Does the Quran say, like, if you don't follow Islam, or if you don't follow all the beliefs or teachings of Islam, does it say you should be punished?
Okay, so Islam says very clearly, Inna ad-deena 'inda Allah al-Islam. Surely the only acceptable religion or way of life is Islam, the sincere, pure submission to God. Okay? And whoever seeks any other way other than Islam, it will never be accepted of them. Never be accepted of them. That means, according to the Islamic teaching, the only acceptable ideology, way of life, religion, is the one which is sincere, pure, humble submission to the one and only God. If you submit and surrender to something else, you will never be accepted. If you worship a phone or a man or a woman or a football star, whatever, you will never be accepted of it. God is not going to accept this because He created us for a purpose. If you don't fulfill the purpose, then we'll have to meet the consequence.
So, of the Muslim population, would you say a sizable amount of the Muslim population are Muslims because of their family or their upbringing?
That's most religions. That's common to most religions. People are born into a family.
Yeah, so I'd say that. So if I'm not brought up in a Islamic household, I'm not taught those values growing up, how can I be expected to? And I'm 19 years of age now. I have my own outlook on the world, and they might conflict with some.
It depends now who we're talking about. If it's you, for example, excuse me, you have the whole world at your doorstep or at your fingertips. You are constantly watching on social media, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, whatever, right? The whole world, information-wise, is at your fingertips. That means that means if you used your intellect, you should have used and say, look, there are more than 1/4 of the world's population who believes in one God. Why? Did you ask? They believe in one God, which makes sense to me. They don't believe in 3 in 1 gods, or they don't believe in multiple gods, or they don't believe in idols. So
a lot of people do believe that.
No, I'm saying when you yourself were to ask these questions, you using your intellect will then be coming to a point where you will not have an excuse saying, oh, I didn't know, no one told me, because the information is now bombarded to you from everywhere. Look, you came to Speaker's Corner, guess what happened? You came to Speaker's Corner, information came to you. You didn't come to the information came to you from us. Information is always being passed on to us, whether we've been bombarded with information passively or actively.
Okay,
always.
I understand what you're saying.
But if it was a 90-year-old woman or a man in a home who have no information because she or he doesn't look into the internet or have access to a library, doesn't have a copy of the Quran and so on, it's totally different. Because how much of the information did they have access to? You can only be judged with the information that you've been accessible to yourself. Like we said about the intellect is also there. So if that individual using the intellect realize I can't worship a tree or a monkey or an elephant or a human being, or God is a Trinity, whatever, then you already see that these people, in the day of judgment, they'll be in a positive light. Why? Because they are coming closer to the understanding of who God is. That's how much the intellect can arrive to. Your intellect cannot come to the conclusion about that God is this, everything. There's a limitation of intellect. There's a role that intellect can play, but it cannot answer all your questions. Yeah? But intellect can then also, at the same time, reject many of these concepts about God. Yeah? So it might not affirm all of them, but it can reject a lot of those false concepts of God. That's where then when you look at the revelation will confirm your intellectual thinking, intellectual guidance, and then say, yep, I accept, I submit, I surrender. Because you are the only one worthy of worship, no one else. That's why the process of accepting Islam in our tradition, do you know what it is? The first one is of negation. You have to negate nothing worthy of worship. La ilaha. Unconditional, that's it. There's nothing worthy of worship. So imagine everything, like nothing. Man, woman, tree, flag, nation, pop star, football star, celebrities, nothing worthy of worship. And then you affirm, but the one and only true God. That's the process of accepting Islam. So there is this role where intellect and the guidance plays hand in hand. No wonder God didn't just leave with our intellect only. He sent prophets and messengers and gave them guidance too in the form of scriptures.
Okay, but the thing is, you're saying that you're basically saying that everyone's intellect, if they're exposed to the teachings of the Quran, everyone's intellect should automatically think that's
I didn't say everyone. I said the sound intellect. Sound.
Sound intellect. Or so if I consider myself someone who has sound intellect, my intellect should automatically tell me that this.
You can ask yourself.
My point is this: you were brought up, or I don't know if it, but if a lot of the Muslims on this earth today were brought up in a Muslim family, they were brought up being taught those values their whole life. I've been brought up maybe being taught different values my whole life. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not individual with sound intellect, but my sound intellect might still tell me that everything in the Quran is not correct and is not something I should follow. So how do you
just to expand on this? Say someone who worships an idol and says, look, I use my intellect all the time. That's why I got a good job, I got a good friend or a husband or a wife, and I have all this properties and money and successful. They will say I'm using the intellect. But using the intellect soundly in the matters of the reality, in the matters of your belief about the Creator and so on, have they been using it? This is what we demonstrate here, that that's not the case. Yeah? If someone is really sincere, truth-loving, and uses the intellect properly, even though they worship an idol, after discussion and understanding and reflection, they will say, yeah, it makes sense. Why they will say that? Because that's the sign of the sound intellect. You will see many people, they will say, yes, it makes sense not to worship an idol, but this is my religious tradition. Or I try to focus on it because I can't imagine God in any other way, so I have to concentrate on something. It's a focus point. So they're trying to justify it. But if you really delve into it, any belief system which is not in congruence or in conformity or in harmony with the true belief system, your intellect will reject it. Polytheism, tritheism.
There's so many people that believe so many other things.
So you're basically saying, why is our truth more truthful than someone else?
Because
I mean, what proves us more than everyone else? Why?
Basically, I'm like, I don't understand the idea that of someone. So what if I don't have sound intellect? What if I'm someone that's if under your belief?
Very good question. Very good question. Very good question. Very good question. So if your intellect is somehow incapacitated, meaning you don't have the ability.
So you're saying? Are you basically saying everyone?
No. You have to hear me out. All right. Either someone is totally unable to use their intellect. There are many people like that. Okay, it could be a medical condition, for example. If you're unable to, then you are not accountable. If you're totally insane, clearly you cannot use your reason whatsoever, you are not accountable. There are many people in the Islamic tradition understanding of things, the pen has been lifted. They cannot be accountable because they are not able to use their reason and intellect. But the difference is, if you have a person who has the ability but does not use it, they will be questioned on why did you not use it? Did they not come to you? And they will say, yeah, but we didn't use our intellect. Then they will have no excuse. Because if you had the ability to use your reason and you do not use it, you will be held accountable for that. Because if you had used it, you would not have believed in such and such and ended up in such and such worse destination. That is the Quranic teaching. If you have the ability and you haven't used it, then you are accountable for it. Because God didn't give you a brain just to find who's the best beautiful girlfriend or a wife, and that's it. There is a higher purpose of our mind, to find out the reason why here we are in this cosmos. Because I may not have been here in this reality. There are millions and billions of people. Why me as well? Does it matter if I didn't exist? Nothing will change if I didn't exist. But why am I independent of existing? Because I am important in God's creation. I have a reason why I'm here. That means I need to find out why am I here, where I came from and where am I going. If I didn't use my intellect for doing this, then I cannot have an excuse in the day of judgment saying, well, I was too busy with my studies and with my work, with my pastime, with my football, with my soap operas, whatever. It would not be an acceptable excuse.
Okay, but the thing is, so if I'm brought up with my father is teaching me this is the way to live your life, this is how people live, and that's based on Christianity, or that's based on nothing, that's just based on his experiences in the world. And then at the age of 30 years old or so, or at my age, someone shows me a Quran, and that conflicts. What's in the Quran is conflict with what I'm taught. How am I to if my intellect is formed by my upbringing and formed by what I've been taught my whole life, and that's what I see as logic. How can I then read the Quran suddenly
it's not a sudden process.
This is right. This is right.
Yeah.
And
so it's not a sudden process. That's why the Quran tells us the importance of from the changing of societies and understanding of how people learn and educate themselves. Yeah. So Islam has a very much importance on education from the very young, where people are not conditioned to be totally brainwashed and that's it, you can't think. It makes people critical thinkers, and that's why if you look at Islamic tradition in the past, it generated generations of critical thinkers, scientists, social scientists, philosophers, biologists, astronomers, and they contributed to the world knowledge and civilization and technology. I mean, many of the stars' names are given by Islamic civilization astronomers. Why so? Because they didn't just stop there. They used their mind and looked into the horizons and look at the world that God has created. They did not occupy themselves with this small life and let me just go to work and come back to work and Saturday and Sunday just drink myself off and then wake up on Monday and then Monday evening a little bit okay, Tuesday much better, and Friday, yeah, and like a cycle of slavery and servitude to this machinery of economics. No. Islam encourages people to develop, to grow, to perfect, to uplift their character. That's why one of the reasons the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet who brought this Quran, he said he was raised لِأُتِمِّمَ مَكَارِمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. He was raised to perfect the nobility of character. You see? So you have a noble character. You're not someone born in debt, born doomed to die because someone else did something, but you are then to carry on developing, progressing, and improving yourself. And God tells us about these things that we are saying so common between all the religions, that He says He has guided us and showed us the two ways. إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. God says we have shown them, guided them in the two ways, whether they're grateful or ungrateful. Doesn't matter. He's given them two ways. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Successful are those who purifies it. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. are the ones who are in loss are the ones who obviously has wronged it, totally oppressed it, totally damaged it, and so on. So we have this inbuilt understanding of good and bad already. So your parents,
you believe each person has like something inside them that will tell them.
That's how we are created in our makeup. We are created to understand the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, and God shows additional guidance in the form of maybe in your sleep, maybe in your wakeful state, and then prophets and messengers comes with books and so on to guide you into this total infallible, what we call decisive guidance. Scripture will be the decisive matter. So when the guidance comes to us, we should accept it. That's what the Quran wants us. If you have a sound intellect, your sound intellect will question all the time. Why am I worshipping a tree? You know, yes, my parents told me, be good, but worship a tree. Be kind, but worship a tree. You will be in constant dilemma in your mind and your heart. How am I worshipping a tree? It doesn't make sense. It is not infinite. It is not independent. It is not absolute. How can I worship something which doesn't deserve my worship? Yes, I need to be good, I need to be kind, I need to be compassionate. So these kind of things, you have to differentiate between God, because there is two things in brief. The right of God over us and right of everything else that we have over us, or over everything that has over us, we have over them. So we interact with society, everything in society, whether humans, animals, the environment, the air, the water, whatever. We cannot pollute the air or the water or the land or the sea. We cannot destroy vegetation and crops and so on and so forth. We cannot create all these pollutions. We cannot harm the animals, other creatures, let alone human beings. We're not talking about human rights, we're talking about environmental rights. We're talking about animal rights. We're talking about vegetative rights or vegetation rights. But there is more important to that, the right of God. Have we given the right of God what is due to God? Have we surrendered and submitted our will with all our love, with all our intent, with all our sincerity and truthfulness to God alone, and says, yes, we will follow what you ask us to follow because you're the one who created us? Or are we become the slaves to our culture, our nation, our fashion, our friend, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, whatever? A lot of people have become slaves to their own desires. They go for taking, the best watch, the best clothes, the best shoe, best this, best that, the most expensive, the most, the branded. We have become fashioned to this. But all of this tells you there is something within your heart that tells you that there is something called reverence and gratitude and gratefulness and praise and glory that needs to be shifted to somewhere. We are only shifting into our items and celebrities and our friends and our leaders. God is saying, no. Direct all of this, the ultimate praise and glory and thank belongs to the one who created you. If you were in problem, you're in trouble, you had an accident, she gave you to save your life, blood, kidneys, whatever, would you not be grateful to her? You would. It's a natural response. God gave you all of that. God gave you all of this, and yet should we not be grateful to God, thankful to God for what God has given? That is the essence of worship, where you are thankful for all that God has given you, and then you accept why you are here, and you follow the guidance, and you live your life accordingly. If you do that, then in the hereafter awaits for you success, bliss, joy, happiness, paradise, Jannah. If you don't do that, you become a rebel, an arrogant, stubborn individual and say, I know it's true, but I'm going to reject it. That's what we're talking about, kafir. Yeah? Reject it, then the consequence is not going to be that you will go to heaven and paradise and place of joy and happiness. There's another place God has created for those arrogant, stubborn rejectors. That's the place of torment, place of punishment and suffering, where it will never end, forever and forever. And God reminds us constantly, don't go there. Don't follow the steps which will lead you to that place. Rectify yourself. Remove yourself from wickedness, bad actions, sinful actions. Once you do that, it will be easier for you then to accept the truth. The moment you're engulfed in so much badness or evilness or whatever, it becomes impervious for the good to come to you. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, it's like a place in our body called the heart. If you commit a sin, a black spot forms on it, like there's a black spot on it. If you do another sin, another black spot. Imagine people commit all these bad actions. The more you do, it becomes, all these black actions, eventually it becomes such that it becomes impervious, like there's no way guidance can go to your heart. Guidance wants to come, but because sin has made this heart totally impervious to any guidance. There are people who have made themselves like that. That is why God constantly asks us to reflect and get back in repentance. You know what happens? What happens? Just to finish this point and we'll return there, God willing. When we make, when we realize this, it's when something befalls us. A calamity, a suffering, we wake up. God help us. God save us. You're in a ship, the Titanic, and it's sinking. And you're saying, oh God, I'll be good. I'll be good. Please help me. Please rescue me. I'll be good. They don't pray to Santa Claus, Tony Blair, Superman, what are all the cartoon characters? Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, whatever. None of them will do because they know this is a fiction of the imagination. None of them can help them. They return to God.
Then when you're about to die,
yeah. So God gave us this time period. Says, look, before you die, you have to use your mind, your intellect, your reasons to understand His revelation, His guidance. Follow it, accept it. That's very good for you. If you don't, at the moment of death, when you say I believe, it will not be accepted over. Pharaoh, you know the story of Pharaoh in the Quran. Pharaoh, he was chasing Prophet Moses, peace be upon Prophet Moses and upon all the prophets. He didn't want to believe. He declared himself to be the God most high on earth. And when Moses parted the Red Sea and crossed with his people on the other side, Pharaoh realized that. He was following it. He said, I'm going to follow it anyway. Supernatural, whatever. And then the water engulfed them and his army. And he's about to drown and about to die and says, God, I believe. God says, what? And now? No. It will not be accepted. Believe at the moment of death when the reality hits you is not going to be accepted. So we have to get ready to wake up to this reality before death comes to us. And death can come to us anytime. There is no guarantee that you will live and I will live for another 40, 50 years. People die when they're young. People just suddenly they die without anything. You didn't have any medical condition, you just dropped dead. So it is very important that we constantly think about death. We remind ourselves about death before you go to sleep, for example, and then that will put you back onto the track and say, what am I here then? What's my purpose in life? Then you'll realize that it is important for you to worship God and none else, because that's the only way you can be successful in the hereafter. Okay.
So my question is, so you were saying that sin leads to hell, right?
No, I was saying God does not punish anyone for someone else's sin. You are not guilty of a crime that you did not commit, and you are not punished for the crime that you did not commit.
Okay, so my response then, so the whole point is that sin seems to be a bad thing for God, and that leads to hell. Would you agree with that?
It's not a bad thing for God.
It's
sin, no. What do you mean a bad thing for God?
So sin seems to be something that will lead to hell. Or is it a good thing? Is sin a good thing?
Let me understand your point.
Yeah.
We are created for a purpose, and we are given a particular, say, code of life. Do this and don't do this. Let's simplify it. Do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
Okay? If you don't do the things that God says don't do them, so you're following God, do those things that God asks you to do, and you're following God, and you have the correct belief, then you become recipient of God's mercy of going to paradise. If you don't do those things, you rebel against God, then you are transgressing against God's, transgressor. So when you transgress against God, that act is called sin, transgression. That has a consequence where your consequence is not going to be paradise, a place of joy, it's going to be a place of torment, which is hell.
So let me, okay. So the whole...
Ask you, give me age of 12 or 13, give me an age range where the Jewish ladies or young ladies were getting married What age range were they married in their culture and their tradition? You should know, because you brought this up.
No, I don't know, but my response will be...
Before you give me a response, if you don't know, let me tell you. If you go, if you don't know, then you have to allow me to tell you.
Go on.
Right.
I need to respond.
In the Jewish tradition, they do not let their girls to go beyond a certain age. So as they become in the age of puberty, this is the age of getting ready to marry.
But are Jewish the perfect standard for living?
Oh, please. We are talking about, the age difference between two individuals in their marriage. So I gave an example of Joseph the carpenter, who was 90 years old, and then Mary, the mother of Christ. You would not find any Christian or any Jew who says she was 18. You will not find it anywhere, today or yesterday. Why? Because that wasn't the Jewish tradition. She was married quite old. Let's say she was married 15 or 16. Let's take it to 17, but definitely not 18, because 18 seems to be current standard. 90 and 17. What's the age gap? Do you have a problem with that? 90 years old and 17 years old. Do you have a problem with this marriage?
Do I have a problem?
Yes. Do you have a problem?
If she's 17, her partner...
And 90.
Her partner... Let me... I don't think you understand my point. The point I'm trying to say is...
Can you answer my question first, yeah? Do you have a problem with someone who is 90 years old? Do you have a problem? At that time, they didn't have a problem.
No, I don't have a problem with that.
Good.
I'll tell you why.
Fine.
I'll tell you why.
That's it. You've answered it.
At the end of the day, a person that's whoever marries someone, I'm not saying that it was never done. In those days, yes, people at older age used to marry a young person. They were nobody's standard, okay? So from the Islamic belief, Muhammad is your perfect example, not for just that time, but for his time today.
And what does he say when we should get married? According to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Yeah,
Very important question.
He's the perfect example.
No, according to his teaching, you missed the point. According to his teaching, okay, go ahead.
So a 54-year-old marrying a 9-year-old, if you go to Arabic nations today, you see the consequence of that. People are dying. Young girls are dying because they're not mature. Their parts are not mature enough to hold a baby or to
Then that's wrong.
An adult man's penis.
Islamic marriage is okay, finish, I'll tell you. Remind me about this thing, about harm.
Perfect example. I'm not saying Jewish didn't do it, but I'm saying no one is saying that the Jewish people are perfect people that we should follow. But
So let me respond to what you just said.
Yeah.
In the Arab world, young people are dying. They absolutely should be accountable in the court of law by committing harm. Because in Islam, marriage is between two individuals where the marriage, what we call the, you have the nikah where the marriage needs to happen, right? So you have the engagement and you have the consummation. Consummation, if there is any risk of harm being done, then they cannot consummate the marriage. Excuse me, if you allow me to respond to you. In the Arab world or in this world or any other world, if there is going to be harm involved in consummation of the marriage, that marriage cannot be consummated. Islamic principle. So you are bringing a point where we agree with. So that is not the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's not his teaching. In fact, his teaching is, please, the teaching of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam about this, there is no age limit. But there are certain conditions where you have to reach the age of puberty, at least, that becomes you ready to conceive, ready to have this consummation. You have to also, the Quran says, reach the age of rushd, what we say, intellectual maturity. So the Quran does not, if you allow me to, the Quran, you didn't know? How long have you been studying Islam? Okay, don't worry, remind me people, yeah, remind me. We'll come back to this point, remind me. But let me make my point. What we're saying is, the Quran does not restrict marriage relationship because it is universal. The Quran came as a universal book for all times, all places. It doesn't restrict to someone giving someone's age, 18, 16, 14, 21, because different cultures will have different age of maturity. Do we agree?
Yeah.
Different culture has different ages of maturity. In some culture, they mature very young. Some culture, they mature quite late. Maybe maybe someone is 15 years old and they haven't reached the age of puberty. Some cultures, 12, they've reached the age of puberty. So Islam doesn't restrict it to some artificial age It gives you the biological age, because that's the point where your body is ready.
What is the biological age?
There is none.
There's no
Biological age is when your body is transforming you into a man or a woman.
So where does it say?
So that is why I will say, don't worry about this, let's continue this point. That is why Islamic law, we say, is universally attainable. Universally attainable. You don't need to have a bone density x-ray to find out whether age of 18 or 17 and a half. Once you have reached the biological maturity and so on and other conditions,
So where does
then
it say that once you reach the biological? Because I've not seen it.
If it's harmful to one, it can't
So
happen.
where does it say if it's harmful to them, don't marry them? Is that
the Prophet's teaching is,
where does it say? I don't have.
okay, fine. You haven't seen it, don't worry.
Because I know in this
What I'm going to do is,
people tend to make things up. So that's why we say
I'm
bring
quite
a reference.
surprised in the information age. If I were to now just open up Google, right, and I just type in, you will see so many Islamic websites telling you how this is.
Because I've
Once
checked
again,
it and I didn't
excuse me.
find it, so maybe-
No, you haven't checked. I mean,
I
I'm
did check it and I couldn't find it.
if you type in, and it will tell you that, even type in going to Islam Q&A, for example, which gives you a religious verdict, it will tell you, yes, this is the condition, la darar wa la dirar, where there is no harm. You cannot have a harm principle. Okay, the age of marriage in Islam, Islam Q&A, put it in, something like this, and you will see. I mean, you can do it on your phone.
Reference. I'm saying
No, I don't need references for this. Why? Because this is no. I'll tell you why.
Something that Islam
Because
says as long
not
as
at this moment.
conditions.
Listen, not at this moment. Why? Because this is something, a common teaching of Islam. It is something that you can go,
No, it's not common. If it's common teaching, then
you know, just because you say so, and you only learn about grooming gangs, and you think this is Islamic, then that's your problem, not mine. So, in fact, next week, you know what? Next week, I can bring perhaps books and articles. Are you listening? Excuse me.
Said it's okay. That
Are you
slept
listening?
With a 9-year-old.
No, he didn't say that. Are you listening?
He slept with a 9-year-old, a
Oh,
50-year-old man.
hang on.
Sleeping with a 9-year-old.
If she's
your
emotionally
first
and physically ready, then
where's
that
the
is what's
reference
going
to that?
to. This is the first thing I've come. This is the first
No,
thing I've
where's the
seen.
reference? It's someone's giving their opinion, but it's not a reference. It's not reference.
This is the first thing.
Yes,
Okay,
but
I went on
that's
Google. This is the first thing I
That's
saw.
what,
You know what?
he's saying. What he's saying is like in mosques, you'll have different teachings and stuff like that. They'll say
references
They'll
are
always
there.
be in a
By the
book
way,
and stuff.
I say the same thing to Christians. I say the same thing. I said, look, because as humans, we tend to give our opinions. Sometimes we want to change them. And I said, no, you can't just make stuff up. If you have a concept you're teaching, back it up. Islam comes from the Quran and it comes from the Hadith, which is the Sunnah of the Prophet, right? So you can't
Okay.
make up. There's so many
Let's
things
let's
Muslims
let's
have different-
let's summarize this, right? This particular discussion.
So ask
I give you.
So you have interpretations
If
from
that's
modern
the
day.
you'd see
No,
no.
there's something we can do here quite easily, right?
Because the Quran.
Just one second.
the Quran says
One
you
second.
can-
One
doesn't
second.
say you
One
can have- I'm sorry,
one moment. One moment, right?
65
I give you 2 weeks.
It says the Quran.
Are you listening?
Contradicting that.
Excuse me. You're not listening, right?
I am. Okay, go on.
I'm going to give you 4 weeks to search the internet and Islamic bookshops and come back in 1 month's time and then tell me that I have not found the when Muslim man and woman should get married to and what are the references. If you can't find it, then you have a point that it's not easy to find, and if you find it, you found your answer. I am telling you, if you go to now Park Lane, not today maybe, in Regent's Park, Baker Street, Regent's Park, Baker Street, there is Regent's Park Mosque. There is a bookshop associated with this mosque. You will see a section as you go in about women, marriage in Islam, between rights of spouse and so on. I can even picture it. Books written in English language, not Swahili, in English language. So they're there. If you are selected, excuse me, you are interrupting, I want to make a point. If you are selected, look, I am saying, I am not looking, you've already diverted this talk to look what? Presentism. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to talk over you then. You have directed this conversation to presentism, judging with today's morality to a custom which was widely accepted all over the world. In fact, it was in Europe, not in Europe, in England, even the kings were marrying very young. Edward Henry, whatever you call it, very young. It was a common practice in Judaism. In Judaism, common practice. Hinduism, across the globe. But only in the modern times, somehow you have a problem with the Prophet marrying someone who is a young lady. Hang on. Let me ask this question again. Is this a sin? Okay. Someone 54 years old marrying a 9-year-old, is this a sin according to God? That's the question you asked earlier,
you're not
right?
understanding what I'm saying.
No, I'm asking you a simple question. I would like to answer from you to this gentleman and this lady here. Someone who is 54 years old marries a 9-year-old lady because she's reached the age of puberty and so on. Is this a sin according to your scripture?
The response, you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm saying to you, you have the perfect example for mankind.
Stop there, sorry.
Who is Muhammad.
I've asked you a specific question. Unless you answer the specific question.
The way I want to. You need to give me a chance to answer.
You're just going attacking it. You're just attacking.
You didn't answer my question.
Muhammad, you're not answering the question.
Okay.
We have to like carry
in her
on
own
the
way.
conversation and like you can't just go back to the original question that we asked.
You've been quite successful in interrupting this talk, isn't it? Very successful. We were talking about energy, God, and guess what we're talking about now?
Child marriages.
Child marriage. Presentism.
We thought about the question for
Okay,
about 5
let me
minutes.
bring it back to what I meant. Let me bring it back.
Can you answer the question first before you bring it back? Is it a sin in
Is
your own
it-
way?
is
Look,
it the
in
question
her
is-
own way, in your own words, in your own language, in your own expression, the answer has to be given to this following question.
Mansoor,
Is it,
you haven't answered
excuse
my
me,
own
please.
Hold on.
Mansoor, that's not fair.
You see, please be fair to this gentleman and lady here. In your own way, in your own expression,
One second.
thank you, in your own way, is it a sin according to your own religious scripture, marrying a marriage between a 54-year-old and a 9-year-old? That's the answer we seek.
Christianity.
No, according to your own scripture, is it a sin to marry a 9-year-old woman by a 54-year-old man?
Okay, let me respond. First of
Bible.
all- first of all,
She believes in the
Does
Bible.
it specifically say
I'm asking, is it a sin according to the Bible?
Let me respond. Mansoor, because you've dodged my question, right? You've literally done it, you've not answered me. The point I'm trying to make, you have the perfect example at all times, someone that his way of life, this is why Muslims grow their beard to the dark.
Is this how she's answering?
No, let me finish, Mansoor, because you didn't answer my original question.
That's not what we're discussing now.
finish.
We're discussing here
Let me
with the
speak.
presentism. I will let you finish. I will. Only if you answer the question.
finish this?
So you have a perfect example for mankind, right? We started off talking about sin and how it leads to hell. So I'm saying you have the perfect example of mankind, and a lot of these things, I would say, you did, for today's standards, is immoral. So I'll give you an example. There's lots of examples. There's wife-beating examples.
Oh, see this? Another one introduced, wife beating.
Let me finish my point.
In
I'll
your
come
head,
back.
it's
I'll
called
come back.
injection of what?
But
Oh,
let me
wife beating.
finish.
Wife beating.
Let me finish. So
I'm not going to let you finish. Do you know why?
No.
Instead of answering,
Hold on.
I will. I'm just joking.
Yeah, I know, but I think she's gonna. Yeah, I know.
So,
she's gonna like.
okay, now we have now another thing. Wife beating introduced in a question she's trying to answer.
Okay, I'll come.
Don't divert from.
Sad.
So the point is, when I look, this is where it came from. When I look at the example of Muhammad, by every standard, he breaks the standard. You know, he seems to be an immoral person. You know, even by today's standard. You see what I mean? Because he's supposed to be a prophet for all mankind. I used an example of wife beating one of them, but the example we're talking about, a 54-year-old sleeping with a 9-year-old. By today's standard, yes, I agree with you that back in the day, people used to marry younger. But by today's standard, if he's a prophet for all mankind, for all times, is it right for a 54-year-old to sleep with a 9-year-old, knowing that their body parts are not mature, knowing that we know today there's young people that die as a result of young marriage, as a result of having sex.
But it's clearly said,
I don't think anyone that's logical.
Give me evidence that he slept with a 9-year-old. This is not true.
Exactly.
There was a lot of things we did back then.
Can you let her finish, right?
That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. You have to apply it to.
Please.
Yes. Is Muhammad for modern day? Is he an example for today? Yes or no? Is Muhammad?
All right. Thank you very much for your answer. Did you now realize why I wanted to stop her? I asked her one simple question. According to her own Bible, her religious scripture, is it a sin for someone 54-year-old man marrying a 9-year-old woman? So we all heard her this, that, blah, 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 whatever. wife beating and women getting harmed, marrying young and so on. Did you hear the answer? Is it sin or not? Please, my brother, please. Did you hear the answer? Is it sin or not? The answer is yes, it is a sin. Potential answers: no, it is not a sin. Maybe. Stop. Maybe. No, you have no other chance. I'm sorry, you're forfeited. I'm sorry. I'm gonna. No. There is no coming back. I gave you.
Let me answer your question.
No. Please. The reason why there's no coming back, because I'm gonna go because I have to pray a second prayer, right? Asam. We gave you the opportunity, even though I was trying not you to answer it, because I know you don't answer.
I will answer.
Don't interrupt, please. Because I know from how many years have I known you in this park? Many years. So it's not that I've just suddenly seen her. I know her many years. Know of her for many years in this park. I've been coming in 1990s, late 90s in this park. Many years. I've seen you. Stop. Hang on. I've seen you for many years.
No, you haven't.
So, excuse me.
Because I've not been coming here for more than, only been coming here in the past 2-3 years. So
Right, that's 2-3 years.
Yes.
2-3 years. How many? 52 weeks? And you come quite regularly too, right? Many times, right. So my point is, from my experience, in fact, experience is a very...
Allow me to answer your question.
Sorry.
When he originally answered, you didn't
Please. From my experience, I knew, but I could be wrong. So I remained with a thick skin. I said, okay, what? He's asking me for it. I respect him. I respect you. I'll give it a chance anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she will at one time answer it. Gave her the opportunity. Did she answer? No, she did not. And now she's asking for a second chance. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hang on.
Actually agreeing with her, you didn't answer a question, or I didn't hear it.
Okay. The question I asked her was on the topic of this, because she brought up suddenly from the sin to the Prophet's moral character, right? And then, Prophet's moral character. And now, young marriage. And next is wife beating. She introduced it already. So I asked her simply. It was a simple question. Come on, it's a simple, fair question. Is it a sin according to her Bible? So, should we give her a chance again with an answer of potential answers? Yes, it is a sin. No, it is not a sin. Maybe it's a sin. I don't know whether it's a sin. I don't care if it's a sin or not. 5 potential answers. Shall we give her a second chance?
You haven't still answered her
I
question.
will now after this.
But she asked the question first before you asked her.
Okay, please. So now, could you answer that so that I can answer your question?
Yes,
Which one? No, 5. I've given you 5 potential answers. There is no long explanation. It's simply yes, no, maybe, I don't know, I don't care.
From the Bible teachings, what does it say?
Is that fair?
Simple.
I want to summarize it because, as I said, I have to go to prayer and then answer her question as well.
Is it a sin? The question is it a sin for a 54-year-old to marry a 9-year-old?
From the Bible,
so
yeah.
to have sex with a 9-year-old, yes, it is a sin.
Where does the Bible say that?
Okay. Let me respond to you.
No, I want to see it then myself. I want to see it. No response required. No response required. No, I don't want a response. I want to read it myself.
Let me respond. Wait.
I want to read it myself.
Let me respond. Because remember, I asked you
Sorry.
those
Okay.
conditions,
I'm going to
and
go
you
now
weren't giving me
because
references.
maybe she can talk to you and give her the... What we would like to see is this. The lady here will show you a book, chapter, and a verse where it says clearly in black and white without any ambiguity that you... Sorry, stop. Please. That everyone here sees it in black and white that it says it's a sin. So please do that, and then maybe when I come back and I will learn about this verse that exists in the Bible. Yeah. In the meantime, this is for you to reflect. Take care, and I have to go to prayer. All the best. Okay. Thank you.
Are you Muslim?
Sorry.